What's up everyone, Eric Rossi, the guy with the eye here on Instagram the other day, pretty much last week at this point. I asked for some questions. I wanted to take some time, answer some of your questions. And it was pretty much about anything. It was about some photo gear, and you guys really tackled a lot of the stuff that I've been wanting to cover in some videos. So one or two questions might be fully separate videos that I'll reference to, but here we go. Let's just answer some of your questions. So one of the first questions is from Guillermo, and he asks, what is my routine of having enough YouTube content? It's not easy. So Guillermo, I know you make a lot of YouTube videos as well, and you're really starting to try a lot more too. And it is absolutely not easy. I've got notebooks, pages full of ideas and things that just come up and everything. And I just try and go through them. But I think we kind of spoke a little bit before when we did that interview, and it was more or less, I try to stick to a schedule. So for the most part, I do 3 videos a week. If some breaking news stuff happens, I'll cut that in there. So I'll usually Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, you'll see videos, as a lot of you who watch regularly know that. On my off weeks where I don't have a lot of content or I'm trying to struggle for something, you'll see that I'll post on Tuesday and Thursday, so that way I still get something of quality out and it's not just missing a week or something like that, because I like to be consistent with my stuff. And that's the hard part, is being consistent. But in regards to having enough content, you just have to tackle what you want to do. There are more weeks where I won't cover gear. I mean, as you see, on this channel, I've covered gear a lot, and that's one of the main things you do with the photography channel, because you want to experiment with stuff yourself. You want to see if you want to switch brands or do something like that. So one of the easiest ways to get more views is to do gear reviews, is because that's just what people are looking for. They're looking for their opinion to see if they can justify paying that. But with more content besides just gear reviews, it's the education side of things. It's personal stories. It's stuff like this that you can reach out and, help people out and stuff like that. So just try and think of what you've learned. And one of the main reasons I started is to remember things that I've learned. Like back in the day, I used to make a couple tutorials that I remembered how to do them without writing them down and being confusing, because I love the visual medium. So it was to remember things, it was to teach myself things, it was to reference things, and now it's to reference people other things when they ask questions. So that's one of the things. Definitely jot down notes. Whenever you have an idea, pull out your phone, create a note or something like that, and go from there. It's not easy. I have over 900 videos, and I still have plenty of ideas I want to do. It just comes down to doing them, and sometimes you just got to be topical as well. The next question comes from Gladson, and do I have any tips on shooting long exposures in a city and with light painting? Actually, that's a great question. I do. I actually have an entire video on shooting daytime long exposures in New York City, so I'll link that down in the description below, or search for that on the channel. It's shooting daytime long exposures. And you just need to have the proper gear, and within that, I kind of tell you everything that you need. You obviously need a tripod, you need a camera. You're going to need some way to trigger the camera, so I usually recommend a remote shutter or something like that, a remote, so that way you could do that somewhere in bulb mode. But the biggest thing, especially for daytime stuff and long exposures in the city, is being able to stop down your lens enough that you can have a higher f-stop, and that you could be able to shoot for longer things than what your camera allows. Reference more of that down in the video below. But light painting, I also have another tutorial on, and I'll put that down below. And if you're doing that during the day, it's a little bit harder, but when you have light, nighttime, and it's darker, it's a lot more easier. I used to have these LED finger lights that I used to have and mess with, and you're really just messing about shutter speed at that point, trying to get the flow, the motion that you want, and you can have fun like that. So I'll link those two down below if you want something more specifically, but it really just comes down to the gear and the practice behind doing it. Third question is from Rick Mentor, and it is 50 megapixels medium format versus like a Canon 5DSR full frame. Now, this actually inspired me to make a larger video about this, which you'll see soon. So Rick, stay tuned for that. I'll break that down. But it's essentially how is medium format compared to full frame format if the megapixels are essentially the same? And there are a lot of factors in that, and that's what I'll cover in that video, because there are a lot to break down. But essentially it comes down to image quality for the most part. It comes to sensor size, the crop ability of that compared to that, and there's a lot more pricing, autofocus, and everything. So Rick, while I'm not going to necessarily answer in this video, it definitely, I thank you for sending this in. It's going to be a bigger topic I'm going to try and do the following week, so stay tuned for that. But definitely a great question, and if anyone else wants to fill in, information down below, help Rick out. But essentially it's going to come down to the sensor size, the image quality, and the pros and cons of each and what you're limited to do on medium format. Linda asks, the Canon 77D, which is the newest camera that they're going to announce at CP Plus, versus the 80D, which is essentially now a year old. So Linda, obviously you're interested in buying one or the other. I'm actually kind of in a similar boat because I've kind of given up the point and shoot vlogging camera game. So I've been really debating doing 80D or 77D as well. And I just really love the 80D. And now, while it's not newer, it's got the year less processor. It's got the Digix 6 versus the Digix 7 now. I just think that you're going to get a lot more out of the 80D, in my opinion. The 77D, nothing really impresses me or jumps out. The biggest thing you're going to want is the dual raw autofocusing. So that's probably the biggest thing. I mean, they even like... For video-wise, they took out the headphone jack of the 80D, and the 77D, they gave you an HDMI input, which I know Tony and Chris, or whoever from the camera channel, the Camera Store TV, were having kind of a debate about this, and I chimed in. And I don't really care about the HDMI. I don't really care about the headphone jack either, in my opinion. But if you want to do a lot of video stuff, and I think you probably want to vlog with it or something, you might want to hear how it sounds better with a headphone jack. HDMI is more or less for monitoring or sending video out. It just all depends on what you want. I don't know if the 77D has me sold, even though it's got a lot of the same things at a cheaper price. It's just the body is like way less. It's not as good as a build quality as from what I've heard. But without saying, I'm going to try and get the 77D before I make a decision myself. But as of right now, the 80D is more appealing to me. The next question is from TogEyes43. I don't know your name. I know that's your handle. But what is the best action camera for stills? So this is an interesting point to bring up because you've seen I've covered a lot of the SJ Cam stuff and some of the off-brand ones, you know, and especially like compared to GoPro, which is a higher price range, a little bit more premium. My answer is that there is no really good stills action camera. It's a very small sensor. It doesn't look that good. I've put a lot of this stuff in my blog and in the post. That way you could see how the stills go, because a lot of people don't cover that. And they're just not good. I wouldn't buy these action cameras for stills. If you really want stills in that wise, your camera phone, for the most part, 95% for the most part, will have better image quality than this produces, especially even for video at times too. Then the question could be, it being more waterproof, that way you can go into water with something like that and take some stills. If that's the case, look into a GoPro, look into the SJ cams and see which one you'd like. Once again, the pictures, they're just a little too sharp. They're just not that good. You buy these more or less for the video. But for the stills, I say look into something else, in my opinion, something smaller, affordable. You can even get better point and shoots out there that aren't thousands of dollars, and maybe hundreds, and you can use that as an alternative to something like that. Next question is from Steven, and that is Tamron versus Sigma, their art series, over Nikon and Canon, and what I feel about that. It's actually an interesting point, and you know, go back probably 3 years, and you really wouldn't compare the Tamron or third-party Sigma, Tamron, any Tokina against Canon or Nikon, because they were making far superior glass, especially the 7200s as well. And I grew up using this, 4 or 5 years ago, actually about 5 years ago when I started my journey in this, I was using a Sigma 28-70 2.8, which wasn't a good lens. I didn't know that at the time. I was using one of the first versions of the Sigma 70-200. I owned a Tokina 11-16, etc. Some of those are still good lenses, but for the most part, they're not. And now, Tamron, Sigma has been stepping it up a ton with their art line. I've played with the 85 1. I think it's the 85 1.8 or 1.4, whichever, that they released at Photo Plus last year that you were able to finally get hands on, and I was blown away by that lens. Now, Tamron is coming out with amazing quality stuff as well for fractions of the price. So now, I mean, I even own the Tamron 15-30, which is filming me right now, because I think it's a way, way better quality. This is one of my favorite lenses than the Nikon 14-24 or alternative ones as well. Don't count out Tamron and Sigma, because they are making great lenses, more or less prime lenses for the most part now. 1.8s, 1.4s, and stuff like that are really coming out, and Sigma is releasing a bunch of stuff right now as well. But I also wouldn't count out a Nikon 24-70, a Canon 24-70, 16-35, because those are also high quality lenses as well. But my whole thing, and I guess you want to try and justify buying a third-party lens, don't feel bad doing it because they are high quality as well. The gap between quality has closed a ton over the past few years, and it's just whatever makes sense for you. Thank you so much for everyone for sending in your questions, and mainly on Instagram, so thank you so much for that. If you want to follow me on Instagram and send me questions or anything like that and I try to appear in an upcoming video, add me at the guy with the eye on Instagram. And if a lot of you post and you interact, I see what you're doing, I follow back, and we have some great discussion. I love to see what you guys and girls do as well, as I'm very active on Instagram, especially stories as well. Thank you so much for watching. Eric Rossi, the guy with the eye. As always, keep an eye out.